vintage cameras. Let's talk about it. So a couple of weeks ago, a photographer friend of mine and I were DMing on Instagram, and we were talking about cameras and old cameras and things like that. Eventually we came up onto the topic of vintage cameras, and he told me that he has like 4 or 5 boxes filled with vintage cameras, really old cameras that people aren't using anymore. So he wanted to give them away, and he asked me if I would like to have some cameras for my background and cameras to try out for myself and own them. So when he asked me this, I immediately agreed. We met up 2 days later, I think, and I chose out a couple of cameras, and this is how I am in a possession of several older cameras, vintage type cameras, film cameras to be precise. So today we'll talk about the vintage cameras I took and the vintage cameras I have in this room right now. In this video I'm not going to make a full in-depth review because I don't have any experience with these cameras. I never shot with them and I just have them since a couple of weeks, so I don't had that much time to explore them, try them out. What I do have is some knowledge on them, the things they can do, the things they have. Make sure to grab some chips, make sure to grab some tea, because this will be a really relaxed video where we talk about cameras that are older than me. So the first camera is the Praktica LTL3. So the Praktica is a 35mm film camera. So you plug in, when you open this up, you can put in a 35mm film roll inside of it. Completely different than a full frame camera. And another thing that's really different from a full frame camera compared to a Praktica LTL3 is that this camera is a SLR camera. Stands for single lens reflex. And single lens reflex cameras are cameras that have a movable mirror behind the lens which reflects the image through a 5-sided prism, or a pair of mirrors which reflects that to the viewfinder, which is completely different compared to a full frame camera which uses a sensor to make the image visible so we can see it through the viewfinder or the LCD screen. So this is totally different. We are using crystals here. Like I said, this camera is like 40-50 years old, so the difference in technology in 50 years time is really baffling to me. When you open it up, you can put the 35mm film roll over here. You need to click it onto here, close it up, and you can start shooting your film picture. Also, a thing which I really like about this camera is this camera doesn't have autofocus, and one of the other cameras I have does have autofocus, but this one doesn't. Everything is manual. It makes me appreciate the technology we have nowadays. Some other features are, it has a tripod mount, also have a little self timer over here so you can take pictures with it. This is basically the Praktica LTL3. Yet again, I haven't gone into detail with this camera because I have this camera for not even that long and I haven't really tried and shot with it, so I can't really say much about it. But we can't shoot without lenses, so let me show you guys the lenses I have. So the first lens we are going to talk about is the Panagore PCM 28mm. This lens was actually on top of the Praktica LTL3. As I said, I haven't used it, so I have no idea how good it actually is in reality, but on paper it looks really good. It's a 28mm lens, so it's a pretty wide lens, but this lens also has an aperture of f2.5 and it goes up to f2.2, so we can assume that when we shoot with this lens and the Praktica camera, we can get a lot of things in focus with the high f-stop with f22. It is much better compared to other lenses in low light situations just because it can go down to f2.5. So I have no idea how film cameras really work in low light situations, so I really want to know how good this lens is and the camera in a low light situation. So other than that, this lens is really robust. This lens feels like a lens that is made in 2021. We are going to test it out and we will see if this lens can produce great quality film photos with the Praktica LTL3. So the other lens is the, let me see, Pentacon 50mm, and this lens is nuts. Really nuts. This is the only lens I have in my possession which can go down to f1.8. This lens can go up to f1.8 and it goes down to f16. So this is a very fast lens which you can also use in low light situation. Yet again, the question comes up, are film cameras good in low light situations? The capabilities this lens provides, the possibilities this lens provides are really dope, because I can already imagine myself shooting with the Praktica LT-L3 and this lens on top of it, and trying to shoot fast moving subjects like cars and things like that, and using that f1.8 and having that film look. I think that would look really dope, especially with a film look aesthetic and using an f1.8 lens. So I have to say shout out to Philip, because Philip is a YouTube friend, Twitter friend of mine, and he told me that I could use this lens on top of my Canon EOS RP. The only thing I needed to buy was an adapter, Pentacon 55mm f1.8. Let's try it out in the future. The next camera is the Lubitel 2. Look at this bad boy. Look at the autonomy. Look at this beauty. Look at the history. So the Lubitel 2 is a Tel-ER camera, which is a twin lens reflex, and the name says it all, twin lens. This camera has two lenses, and the reason why it's called reflex is that the camera itself has a 45-degree mirror inside of it. So one lens is used for the viewfinder system and the other lens is used for the actual shooting. So both lenses are 75mm. So this already tells me that it's a camera which you need to use for close-up photos like portrait photography or just actual close-ups of your subject. You can dial the shutter speed between 1:50, 1:25, 1:60 and 1:15 and bulb modes. Those are the only 5 things you can change about the shutter speed. So the Lubitel 2 has an aperture range of f4.5 to f22, which is really big. Yes, this lens / camera doesn't have the f2.1 or the f1.8, so not that much light can come into the lens compared to those cameras. 4.5 is good enough. So this camera is very limited, and I know it's limited, but this camera is only used for specific situations like portrait photography, close-up, and you can change between the aperture from f4.5 to f22, so we have a lot of range we can play with. All in all, this camera might not be the best, but trust me, this camera looks the best. Let me know what you think about the autonomy of this camera, of the Lubitel 2. So last but certainly not least is this bad boy, and you guys have no idea how much I like this camera, the autonomy of this camera. And for the record, this looks like a film recorder, the traditional film recorder, but this camera is actually a photo camera. You can take pictures with it. I really love it. I really love it. And this camera is the Canon Apoca 135. I butchered the name, I guess. So out of all the cameras I have, this camera is the only one that has a inbuilt flash, but this is the only camera that has a zoom lens in it. 35 to 105mm zoom lens. The only bummer in this video, the only thing that I have a negative nitpick about, is that this camera has a f-stop range of f2.8 to f6.6. It has trouble, or at least it can't get a lot of things in focus. Can be used in low light situations. Again, I don't know how film really works in low light situations, so I have no idea what to think about the low range between the f-stop numbers, but it does have the ISO numbers from 25 up to 3200, which is really dope. So we can increase the ISO much higher compared to the other two film cameras from what I've seen. If I didn't mention already, this camera also has a film roll inside of it, or it needs a film roll inside of it. So all the cameras I showed you guys today are film cameras, and so a limited aperture range, we can change the ISO quite a lot actually, and it runs on film. So I'm really curious about what we can make with it and how it really looks. Zoom lens, 35mm to 105mm, limited aperture range, but we can bump up the ISO quite a lot. So the Canon Epoca 135 is one I really wanna use. So with that being said, if you guys like this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and leave 2 things in the comments. What are your thoughts about the cameras and the equipment I showed you guys in this video? I'm really curious about your ideas and thoughts and things like that. And also, do you guys want me to document my journey on film cameras? Because I'm planning on to learn how to shoot with film cameras. I really want to show you guys what the results are, the pictures, how they look, to develop film and things like that. Really documenting my journey on learning how to use film cameras. Be sure to leave that in the comment section down below. And with that being said, guys, I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I hope you guys have a happy new year, because I'm recording this on Christmas, but you will see this in the new year in 2022. So with that being said, guys, I see you guys in the next video.